Well, hello folks. I've been getting my camera set up here, my lighting just right. Beautiful day here today, and it kind of inspired me to tell a little story that happened years ago about catching a deer. That the way it started out, you never know this would even happen because it was a long process, and but it even made the papers in my little town. And here in my little town, they built a bypass, and I don't know. I was in my, I think I want to say I was in my late 20s or middle 30s, something like that. And no, I don't really know. I can't remember. I want to say. But anyhow, whenever they built the bypass in our little town, I had just switched over from from the Air Force to the Army, and been in the Army about probably 4 years maybe. So I guess I had to be probably 40-some. Let's see, 18 I went in the military, 18 and 10 be 28, 12 be 30, 30, probably about 36, maybe 38. But anyhow, don't matter. But at that time, I could still catch a deer pretty easy with my hands. I was kind of, hadn't done it in a while, but I was still agile and quick, and could do what I needed to do. And after they got this bypass built, they had already built, I believe, a Walmart on it and a couple other things. And they'd taken up the old railroad. Now this old railroad, it went across the bypass coming from the west and went across the western end of the city and went across at least one busy street outside the bypass. And I think I had been to Walmart maybe, or I might have been at the reservoir fishing. But either way, I was coming down the bypass, and there was this doe deer, wouldn't weigh over probably 98 to 110 pounds at the most. Hard to judge one from a distance, but it was following that roadbed in through town. And so when it crossed the road, I don't know what struck me, the way the deer was traveling, I guess, because it was traveling pretty quick, like it knowed where it was going or something, I don't know. Maybe been a dog chasing it at one time, I don't know. But the deer, I could tell, was going somewhere on a purpose. He wasn't just lingering around and so forth. And it struck me that deer was going to go on through town. And hey girl, my dog just come in. But it struck me that deer was going to go through town to the next busy street. Well, I speeded up a little bit. It didn't break no speed laws, but I went just as quick as I could around and up the main street of town. It took me it was about a mile and a half to where I was going. Main street of town, and getting to where I could see if that deer come out on the highway, because it wasn't going to make it across that road if it did, as much as the traffic was at that time. And So I got over to that street, and I looked and looked, and just I hadn't been there more than a minute. Then here this deer come up off the railroad track and went through a service station lot, just the edge of it, and was following the sidewalk toward the main part of town. Now this sidewalk that the steer was traveling on was above the road, and it was higher than what the road was. What I'm trying to tell you, one side was flat with the road, and the other side was about. I'll let you out when I get to the thing. Go in there and get in bed. Go on, go get in bed. And my dog wanting to go out, and I know it's just 'cause she's pretty out. I'll let you out when I get done with the story. Going back and get in bed. Go on. Sorry about that. And so, anyhow, I said to myself, I said, well, I better slow the traffic down best I can, or they'll scare that deer, and it's liable just to go haywire and jump out into the traffic or anything. So I stayed behind the deer, and hopefully close enough to keep it from coming across the street, which that's what I was wanting to prevent. If it went back toward the yard into between the houses and stuff, that was fine. But anyhow, I wanted to keep it from coming across the busy street, because it was busy all the time on that street. And every now and then a car would get tired of me going slow, and I'd point out my window, I'd put my hand up and point that there's a deer over on like that, so they could see that deer and they'd get the kind of idea of what I was doing. So kind of to make part of the story go a little quicker, I kind of herded that deer all the way downtown, and there was another busy street when I got down to where the church was. It was the main thoroughfare before you get to the city square. You could take this Maple, what they call Maple Street, and go all the way out to the interstate. And it was a busy street. And the only thing I could go on there was luck that the deer would make it across. Well, luckily, happened just as the deer got to the traffic light, the light changed and stopped the traffic coming from south to the north. No, yeah. And yeah, south to the north right at that point where it was at. And so the deer went across that part of the road pretty good. Well, I wanted the deer, at that time there was a bank on the corner after a parking lot, and I wanted the deer to go up to the right of that bank and get out of the main traffic. And so I kind of speeded up a little bit and kind of got up beside the deer. Well, when I got up beside the deer, the parking lots of this bank had a lot of bushes in it and stuff, and it went through that parking lot, and that made me able to make a turn and go stay beside the deer, and it went up and behind that parking lot and into another parking lot. Well, from that next parking lot, if I could be lucky enough to do it, I could get the deer in behind what was called the Brown and Proctor Hotel. And if I could get her to go in there, I could shut a gate and keep her in there until I got the game warden there and a veterinarian to bring his trailer out, and they could take it down to the reservoir and turn it loose. Now, I had no intentions of them having to sedate that deer with a dart gun, because once they got there, I was going to catch the deer for them as long as they done what I told them to. But so anyhow, when she got in that big parking lot, and it was a turmoil for her to figure out where to go because there was so many cars and buildings there, and people walking around the. There's another bank on one right side that next parking lot, and then the motel, and then the other bank on where she went into that parking lot. So I had to park my vehicle on the main street there, and to keep traffic from coming up that way, and put my blinker lights on to kind of check up the traffic. Well, I did that, and I eased real quick up toward the other bank, and I got the deer looking out of her right eye, and she turned and went, oh, just as perfect toward Brown Proctor as you could get. And when she went into Brown Proctor, she had to go into a kind of a low spot where the old garbage can and stuff like that sat behind the Brown Proctor. And then there was a walkway that she could walk through, and went between some buildings there by the bank and the Brown and Proctor. I guess the Lord was helping me drive that deer, because she just went exactly where I wanted her to go. So she went in down that sidewalk behind the Brown and Proctor, and so the minute she got in there and got about 25 foot up that way where there wasn't no way out, I run to shut the gate. Now, the deer could have jumped over that gate at any time at that point, but I know she'd check it out first, because there's gravel back there, and it was quiet, except for air conditioner now and then. But I got it on my CB in my truck. Back then we didn't have no telephones like we got today, but I had a CB, and I got a hold of the police department on my CB and asked them if they could have, I told them what the situation was, that I had a deer behind Brown and Proctor that was caught up, and I wanted to catch that deer to move down to the reservoir. And I got the dispatcher down there knew me, and I told him, and I needed him called Joe Carrier. Joe Carrier was the game warden that lived at the reservoir to keep an eye on it, and him and his son done the mowing there at the reservoir. And I told him to tell him to call the veterinarian, who was a cousin of mine by marriage, and have him come up there with his little trailer so we could put the deer in the little trailer and take it down there. Now, I had no mention, I had no reason for him to shoot the deer, because I was going to catch the deer for him. Ended up, I did anyway, but that's the main part of the story. So after about 30 minutes, Joe Carrier and the veterinarian come down there with the little trailer, and they asked me where to back it up to. I said, I'm about to bust, I gotta go to the bathroom, but I said, y'all want to open that gate there and push the trailer back in there, because it was a small trailer, you could push it by hand, and it was only about maybe, it wasn't a wide trailer, it was made just to get in tight places, and it probably wasn't over, wheels and all wasn't over 3 foot wide, and it was short, so they could push it by hand real easy. Well, they pushed it back there, and I went over to the bank and went and used the bathroom real quick, because I was about to bust. I'd waited almost as long as I could. I didn't want to pee my britches. But I got done, and I went back over there, and I went back there to where they was at. And they said, Rod says, that deer ain't calmed down yet. Says, we shot it with tranquilizer, and said, it ain't going to work yet. And I said, well, I looked at the deer, and deer was trying to, it was about 12 foot up to a window. And you could see that window, that there was a light on the other side of it because it had lights on in Brown and Proctor. But the deer couldn't jump that high, and it was trying to jump up there and go through that window. And I said, it ain't never going to as active as it is right now. I said, it's got to calm down before that medicine will work. And I said, I wasn't wanting you to shoot the tranquilizer in it. I said, I could caught the deer without that. And I said, you all stay back here by the trailer and don't say a word. I don't need your help of talking or anything. And I'll go catch that deer for you and settle it down so that medicine will work. Or I don't want you to give it another shot. If you do, it could kill it. Because too much of that stuff on a young deer will kill it. And so they promised me they'd leave it alone since I was the one that got it back there to start with. I guess they figured I must have known something, or I could have never got it in there when I told them where I started driving it from. And so anyhow, I eased up behind the deer, and it was still every now and then trying to jump up there. But I could tell when it was getting ready to jump because a deer go the same movements as a person will. If he's trying to learn to jump something straight, flat-footed or whatever, you got certain movements you got to make before you can make that jump. Well, deer same way. They had to get crouched and everything and ready to make the jump. So I walked up behind the deer, and like I say, deer wasn't afraid of me like it was them. And just as that deer jumped, when it come back down, I caught it under the arms. And the first thing I done as soon as I got it down there was pull it to me. Like I said, it only weighed about 98 pounds. Might not even be that big. But I pulled it to my chest and just held it and nuzzled my head against its neck and face. And it took about probably a grand total of 5 seconds after I nuzzled that deer for it to understand that I wasn't going to hurt it. And it just calmed right down. And as soon as I felt it relax, which you can feel when you're cradling one like that, you can feel them muscles just give and relax. That meant that medicine was taking effect and was going to work quick. And so I just held it there and nuzzled it. And when I felt it just let go, I told Joe, I said, now I'm going to lay it down. And I said, y'all come over here and do your checking, because I knew they'd want to maybe put a tag in its ears or a collar around it to keep track of it. So they come over and they took measurements of it, and they did put a tag in it, and just a metal tag showed that it was caught and moved to the reservoir. And they keep track of I don't know if it had a chip on that tag or not. Might have. But I know they kept track of it for years, so I guess it did. I say years, I'm talking about 4 or 5. But anyhow, after it settled down, they done that, and we took and we put it in the trailer. And by that time, the news media had got there, and they took pictures of us putting it in the trailer and stuff. And so after it's over with, Joe asked me, he said, Roger, now I was friends with Joe, known him for ever since I got out of the military, because one of the first things I done was bought a share down there at the reservoir, me and my dad, so we'd have a place to go fishing close, and take grandbabies and stuff, and children. And so that's one of the first people I met after I bought that thing, because he issued the certificate to me, or took the information to issue the certificate. And I'm friends with him ever since. And I think he's actually a friend of my father-in-law's, of my second wife, before that. because he knowed my wife, Linda. And anyhow, so I followed them down to the reservoir because they wanted me to go with them to help take it out. And before we got it hooked back up and got the beer in there, the newspaper took a picture of Joe and the veterinarian as they were putting it in the little trailer. And it wasn't very big trailer. It was just about the size of a large dog kennel, really. It wasn't much bigger than that. The little deer couldn't have stood up in it if it wanted to. It wasn't very tall, but it was wide enough for him to get in, lay down. And but it was the type that the front door would open up and the top would open up and it wouldn't fold up on you. And that way you could lay the animal in and then shut the top and the door and hold them securely and take them out the same way. So we got down there at the reservoir and it was still out. And we had to wait a few minutes, and the veterinary give it a counter reaction shot to bring it to. But you can't do that too quick, but you can't wait too long either, because you keep them out too long, it can bother them in some ways. I don't know exactly what, but just like a cow or a horse, you have to bring them out pretty quick when you get done doing what you're doing. And so when it come time to give them the shot to wake them up, well, we did. And we got the deer out and laid it on the ground, give it the shot, and then I sat there petting the deer and rubbing it and holding it until it come to. And when it come to, it just kind of shook its head and looked around a little bit. Never offered to get up, and then when I was pretty sure that it could stand up, it licked its lips a couple times and its nose and got itself acclimated to what was going on. And then I got up and helped the deer up, and it stood there a minute, and then it kind of looked around and saw the woods and kind of trotted off into the woods. And they kept track of that deer for several years, and I think it had, boy, my mind's, it's hard to remember some things. I think it was, I won't be exact, it was either 6 or 5 maybe babies that they know of, because they would read the collar and check her every once in a while, find out where. I think it was a radio collar. I believe it had a chip for a radio. And I think after 5 years or 6, the battery went dead on it. But they was able to track her and find her, and she'd have a baby with her every year when she should have. And I think then they lost track of her because the battery went bad. But the deer stayed down there a good 5 years or 6. Of course, there wasn't no hunting down there at that time. Now they have bow hunting down there, and kind of because I guess she started a little clan there, and they built up to, there's enough deer down there now that you can hunt down there. But you got a bow hunt, you can't hunt with a gun or anything. And so it was about the next day, I guess it was, and what kind of funny, a newspaper come out and it says, now the game warden was a cousin of mine. He married my first cousin, or second cousins, no, my first cousin. Wait a minute. My first cousin married his first cousin. So we kind of made us cousins by marriage. Wasn't no actual kin. And I can't right now remember his last name. But he was a good veterinarian, and it had in the newspaper Joe, the veterinarian's name, and Joe Carrier catches deer behind Brown and Proctor, releases in reservoir. And that was kind of funny. They never mentioned my name nowhere, but I didn't care. It was just, me and Joe's laughed about that a dozen times over the years. But it was a fun time to be a part of. I'd hate the thought of what that little deer got something in my eye, probably a dog hair. But I'd hate to say what would have happened to that deer if I hadn't seen it and kind of kept the traffic away from it. And I had to have help from the good Lord because He knows what I'm trying to do. And it just seemed like that He was making it work just perfect. He was telling that deer that I wasn't going to hurt it and to go where I wanted it to go. And it just worked perfect, like I was thinking about where it was to go, and it was reading my mind because it worked out just perfect. But the Lord worked that way. And it's just one of the things that happened in life story, and I'll never forget it. It was a good day, and there was a lot of people that heard about that, and there was very few people that'll walk up and catch a deer because they think it's just going to tear them to pieces, and if they can sense your danger. And it was getting to be, I think it was already bow season at that time because it was still warm and bow season started 1st of September. And I think it was already bow season. I can't remember for sure. But I'd already probably quit eating meat for a month or two to bow hunt and to deer hunt, and I wanted to see that one survive. So I just thought it was going to get into traffic and get killed, and I didn't want that. So y'all can chew on that in a little while. When I'm going to put it on YouTube. It's too long for the other one. And y'all go to Papa on Deal on YouTube, and you'll be able to see this and give me a good subscription and a like story. And them likes and that subscription means more than anything. I'm kind of stuck on 35 subscriptions right now, and it takes a while, but I want to get it built up to where my grandson can get enough money to go to college, because I'm not making enough to actually put him through without putting myself in an awful hard bind. So anyhow, y'all chew on it a while. God bless you, and He will if you let Him. Just open up your heart, let Him in, and open your mind up a little bit too. And we'll see you on the next one.